Trustees, welcome to the October 6th Georgetown ISD Board Workshop. We are first going to start off with public comment. We do have one public comment from our own Susan Cooper.
Hello. I want to commend GISD in their handling of the new SB 13 requirements so far. I've already shared various reports and a documentary with you. I hope you have taken the time to view them and educate yourselves about why these extreme book bans are happening. Make no mistake, this is part of a larger attack on public schools and our freedoms. Let's continue to stand together to protect GISD's parents' right to choose for their own children and our students' right to read. As we continue navigating SB 13 together, consider these statistics from a 2024 nonpartisan study by the Knight Foundation. I'll share the link with you soon. Just 7% of parents with reading-age children say their child has read an age-inappropriate book from school. Among pre-K through 12 parents, a quarter are concerned about this happening in the future, leaving 74% not concerned about it. Strong sentiment is lopsided, with strong opponents of book restrictions outnumbering strong supporters by nearly 3 to 1. In general terms, 78% of adults are confident that their community's public schools select appropriate books for students to read. On Saturday, I had a conversation with a parent who was concerned about a certain book. I reminded her that GISD parents have a wide range of comfort levels concerning book content, and that our board policy states that parents should choose for their own children. I also reminded her that any parent can have a conversation with their student and contact their school librarian to communicate about books they don't want their student to have. This has always been the case, and it didn't require SB 13 to make it so. At the end of the conversation, she agreed that she wouldn't want other adults choosing what is appropriate for her kids. After the call, I looked up the title she mentioned. GHS has owned this title since 2016, and it has won a major Young Adult Book Award. The point is, what is appropriate just cannot be defined for an entire community. Therefore, GISD must continue to allow parents to decide for themselves and their students.
You have 1 minute, Ms. Cooper.
School board, the right of students close to you have been tested. Some of the books that have been targeted are books that were enjoyed or even requested for purchase by your own students or student employees. Unless we stand strong against book bans, yours and your students' rights will also be affected. I buy books for our SPED students who can't read and our AP students who need to be prepared for college readings. I buy books for students who've lived a blessed life and for students who've lived a hard one. I buy books for straight kids and for queer kids. I buy books for students who can't easily go to the public library. I buy books for students from families who want to limit what their student reads, and I buy books for students from families who don't want to limit what their student reads. Finally, I urge everyone to join the Texas Freedom to Read Project or Students Engaged in Advancing Texas. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cooper. Trustees, in today's agenda, we're going to have a report on our bilingual and ESL program. We will have information on library book approvals. We have an overview of the teacher incentive allotment to keep you well informed about what that program is going to look like. We're going to have a beginning of the year data review. We're going to have an overview of our long-range planning and attendance zone presentation. And then lastly, we'll go into closed session. I'm going to start off with I'm going to hand it off to Erica Galindo on our bilingual ESL report.
Thank you. Good evening. Superintendent, I forgot about, do I stand?
You're welcome to stand.
Okay. I think it'll be better. Again, Erica Galindo, Multilingual Services Director. Our Multilingual Services vision at GISD, emerging bilingual students are empowered through multilingual, multicultural learning to become biliterate, meet grade level standards, and achieve at high levels. In looking at our program and an overview and enrollment for last year for 2025, you also see side by side on each of the slides at 25-26 as the action steps moving forward. For 24-25, our emergent bilingual enrollment was at 2,652 students, which makes up 19.11% of our district population. Georgetown ISD represents 30-plus home languages, with the top 5 being Spanish, Telugu, Nepali, Vietnamese, and Russian. Our action steps for 25-26 is to continue to ensure that our emergent bilingual coding after emergent bilingual identification or transfer of emergent bilingual students is accurate, and we are supporting campuses by doing that. Also ensuring that we can continue to recruit and retain our staff to ensure that we have our classrooms and programs covered. And then look into publishing and promoting more family language access supports. And looking at our program models and our fidelity in 24-25, our program types were dual language 2-way, kinder through 5th grade, dual language 1-way for pre-K, ESL content-based at the elementary level pre-K through 5th, and ESL pull-out for 6th grade through 12th grade. For action steps for this school year, we have, again, ensuring that we have those dual language fidelity walks to ensure that we have our implementation strong, and then continuing that observation and feedback for our teachers and support. Sharing models, schedules, and planning templates for the 80-20 implementation framework at the kindergarten level, and then continuing that support with our dual language partner classes from 1st through 5th grade with our 50-50 model. One of the things looking forward to is expanding our content-based language instruction, or CBO-like routines for middle school and high school core classes. In reviewing our TELPAS and reclassification data for 24-25 school year, our TELPAS assessment, we have our K1, which is holistic, and then 2nd through 12th grade is fully online, which includes our writing as well. For reclassified exited students, we had a total of 176 students in grades 1st through 12th grade, meaning that they had scored advanced high composite for TELPAS and then also passed their STAR rating. Again, looking at that data, we see strong exit counts at transition grades for upper elementary, middle, and high. Our action steps is to continue to target our advanced cohort of students to ensure that we can progress to the next proficiency level for advanced high, and then also ensuring that we can provide the Title III tutorials targeting our newcomers and emerging bilingual students who are falling below in STAR or ELC. For our bilingual exceptions and ESL waivers with our staff, for 24-25 school year, for our bilingual exceptions and ESL waivers, we filed 10 bilingual exceptions at the elementary level, 53 ESL waivers for elementary and secondary, and then of that, we have 12 teachers who completed their ESL certification at the end of the school year of those 53 that were filed. And moving forward, we want to continue to reduce the ESL waiver count, ensuring that we can provide that support for that certification pathway and mentoring those teachers who are seeking that certification, ensuring that we can track that monthly, and then also increase those opportunities for certification prep courses that can be included in our district comprehensive professional development plan. We want to maintain our teacher stipends and then increase recruitment opportunities in collaboration with HR throughout the year. With our comprehensive professional development on the left side here, you see the 24-25 school year. In looking at the professional development, it's continuous with our dual language programming training, and as well as ESL Academy internally with our teachers who are seeking their certification, and then moving on to more of the content-based language instruction that we were also conducting, and we want to increase that this year to continue, again, as I mentioned, reducing that ESL waiver count, ensuring that we can support those teachers, and then just district-wide continuation of the program implementation at our elementary level, ensuring that HQI integration, and then language allocation fidelity as well. For family and community engagement for 24-25 school year, we were able to have parent learning community sessions for our families, as well as giving them the opportunity to view our Title III webinars, which are brought to us by TEA, and then also some adult ESL classes that were offered at Title I campuses. Looking for this year, we are wanting to expand those parent partnerships. We have started with our Hispanic Heritage Read Aloud opportunities, but then also making sure that we can have some dual language parent commitment sessions for our programming, as well as continued Title III family workshops, and then possibly expanding our adult ESL classes to other campuses as well. For the upcoming school year and looking at our goals for our department, we have them divided between instructional fidelity, student achievement, and capacity building. And looking at our instructional fidelity, we're looking to continue that implementation of our dual language framework with the 80-20 model in kindergarten, and then continue to support the 50-50 in grades 1st through 5th grade. Our key outcome is to have that consistency with the program implementation across campuses, and allowing that opportunity for our students to progress toward biliteracy and grade level standards. In student achievement, we want to increase the emerging bilingual growth on Tel Pass and class and math, close gaps on STAR reading and math, and again, wanting to have that outcome of by 2028, EBs meet or exceed state accountability targets, progress toward district literacy goals. In capacity building, we want to continue to provide the training and coaching for our teachers and our leaders, as well as the support for the HQIM integration within our dual language framework and language allocation fidelity. This will, again, give us the increased teacher confidence and sustain the campus support systems. And that would be it.
Trustees, do you have any questions for
I do.
Ms. Yeah,
Yeah, I do.
Ms. Mullen?
I guess the first question, well, it's not really a question, I was just really surprised at the 19%. I didn't have any idea it was that high, to tell you the truth. The other question that I had on I guess is the last step, was on the 50-50 and the 20-80. Explain that a little bit more, if you will.
The 80-20 at the kindergarten level. And so, and looking, as you mentioned, the progression of our EB status for our campus, for our district at 19.11, looking at the kindergarten, making sure that we can continue with the 80-20 after the 90-10 at pre-K to make sure that we can.
Okay, stop. What's 80-20? What's 90-10?
Those are our language allocation percentages. So we have the 90% Spanish, 10% English.
Okay.
And then at kindergarten, that would then go to 80% Spanish, 20% English. And again, wanting to make sure that we can have that strong foundation in their native language. And then that will continue moving till we get to third grade for the 50-50.
So what you're saying is in pre-K, it's 90% in Spanish, 10% in English. In kindergarten, it's 80% in English, in Spanish, and then 20% in English, and then 50-50 the rest. Is that the same whether or not it is dual language or whether or not it is solely bilingual? Does that make any difference in those percentages?
No, for our dual language programs, we are starting with that 90-10 at pre-K, 80-20 kinder. We are honoring the 1st through 5th grade dual language cohorts who have already continued at the 50-50 until they complete up to 5th grade.
Okay.
But from moving forward from kinder to then first, then we'll keep moving that percentage until we get to the 50-50 in 3rd grade.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Okay. And then there was, the other one was, when you were looking at the assessment and you said 2nd grade, through 12th grade was fully online. So when you're saying that they're doing Tel Pass online, what is the 2nd grader expected to do online with Tel Pass?
So for Tel Pass, there's the listening, reading, writing, and speaking components of that assessment. So they are, with the module for the listening, they are listening, it's listening comprehension, and then they're able to retell what they're listening for. And then the speaking, they have the headphones, and then they're as well prompted to retell. Some of them are to give instructions back, so they are then looking for that speaking level of a beginner, intermediate, advanced, or advanced high, which are the 4 levels. And then the writing and the reading are together, and so again, reading and responding, not reading comprehension, but then as well, kind of the same as the STAR, having that extended writing response to the reading. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Got a question, Ms.
Yeah.
Linda, thank you
Yes.
for your presentation.
Thank you.
And you've been here with us for a couple of months now.
Yes.
And already right into it. I had a question around how, are we able to provide and pay for teachers to get their certification through RPD? Is that what you're referencing here, or how are we helping folks get certified?
So for the bilingual exceptions and ESL waivers, yes ma'am, we are providing that part of our comprehensive professional development plan per TEA. We are to use 10% of our local funds to be able to be towards either certification prep courses where we pay the registration, testing materials, ESL, same way. We have continuously used the opportunity for others who are seeking ESL certification. We reimburse the testing fee. We also partner with TA on how they have progressed to now providing online courses for people to receive their certification for free. And then as of this August, they started to where you weren't charged to take those tests for those specific certification areas. So again, partnering with them, but as well, the district providing even more opportunities for those teachers to acquire their certification for bilingual or ESL by the end of the school year.
Awesome. Excellent. Thank you.
Ms. Gardo, I would add, first of all, thank you, Erica, for the presentation. I think when you look at that statistic, like 19%, I mean, essentially 1 out of every 5 children at Georgetown ISD is emergent bilingual, right? And so a conversation we're having is what does future professional development across Georgetown, like launching the 26-27 school year in a way where we're equipping all of our staff, regardless of certification, to have the skills and the strategies to meet the needs of emergent bilingual students in every classroom, particularly at secondary, right? But even at elementary, like across the board. And then because emergent bilingual strategies are good for every kid, right? And so how do we do that in a way that it doesn't feel like one more thing, but that it's woven in what we believe about effective teaching and learning at Georgetown ISD? Okay, I'm going to move on with our next presentation. Unless there's any more questions. Okay. We are going to shift to Kim Garcia, who's going to talk to us about information on library book approvals.
Good evening. I have some information to share about a new library materials approval process. In the last legislative session, Senate Bill 13 was passed, and to comply with that, the board adopted a new updated local policy, EFB local, that happened in August. Senate Bill 13 mandates that the board must approve or reject all new library materials, including purchases and donations, before they can be purchased and added to our collections. All materials that are proposed for acquisition must be posted for public review for 30 days before that board vote. So how are those materials selected for your review? We go through a number of steps. So first, the campus librarians will select the materials. They identify new books and magazines that they believe are appropriate and useful for their students and their teachers. They follow our district's collection development policy and the selection criteria that are outlined in EFB local. So we adhere strictly to EFB local. Those lists are then submitted to the district. Librarians are going to submit that list to me, including the list of ISBNs. And just a note on that, if there is a new version of an existing book, so for example, if we want to order a paperback copy of a hardcover book that we have in-house, we have to submit that new ISBN for the paperback copy to you for your approval before we can order it. So only ISBNs that exist on our shelves right now can be reordered by us. So you may see a title come before you that we already have, but we are looking to order a different ISBN, a different version of that book. So after the list is compiled and submitted, it's reviewed by the district. So the district administrator supervising library services, which is me right now, I review every item to make sure that it complies with EFB local. So I'm doing the same thing that the librarians have done, making sure it adheres to EFB local, looking at those book reviews, professional book reviews. And then finally, we post those books online for a public review period of 30 days. So currently we have one list posted on our library services webpage, and we're receiving public comments on that. So what is your role in all of this? Following that 30-day public review period, the final list of proposed library materials and public comments are brought to the board. You must vote to approve or reject that list of materials in an open meeting before any of those items can be purchased or accepted if they're donations. It can be placed on the consent agenda if you choose, and the next board meeting, October 20th, would be the first opportunity you would have to review and vote on some materials using this new process. We propose that we do this monthly in order to make sure that our librarians can remain current with the materials that they'd like to purchase, but certainly that is up for discussion as well. I want to take a minute just to describe the differences between some of our library materials processes. We're talking about the approval of new materials that we don't currently have, and so that's a new process for us. You may also remember that we are reviewing existing library materials, and that's a different process. So House Bill 900, Senate Bill 13, there were some new provisions in that to make sure that we're being compliant with the new laws. So we were looking through individual books to make sure they're still compliant. The challenge to a library material is another process, and so that would be if a community member or a parent wants the district to remove a book entirely from the library collection. They can challenge that book, and so then there's a committee that would work through that, and ultimately, this is new as well, the board would have to vote whether that book can remain on the shelves. So 3 different, completely separate processes. So back to the approval of materials, which is what we're focused on today, and considering those next steps. So from here, we wanted to talk with you about what's next. So reviewing that list of materials, reviewing those public comments that have come in. If you have more questions about or need more information about an individual book or about the entire list of books or about the process, how would you request that? And then finally, approving or rejecting those materials in an open meeting. The next meeting would be a possibility. So I would like to ask you if you have any questions or feedback about the book approval process. Yes, ma'am.
My question is, can you send us a link to that list, or is it easily found if we went to the library page?
I can do both, yes. So it's easily found on the library services page. There's a community input on the library books, which you can expand. It's also in the latest board weekly update, yes. So it's linked there as well.
I think it was in something, but the link wasn't working.
It wasn't working. I'll make sure that you get the correct one. Sorry about that.
I've got a question. It says approve or reject the list. Is this a list that we have to look at and say, yes, we approve this list, or is it book by book? Can we say, well, we approve all of them except this?
You can, yes, you have the liberty to do either.
We can make a motion to approve this one.
We're proposing monthly, yes. But certainly if that's going to be burdensome for the board, we can adjust that to be quarterly. Monthly allows the librarians to make decisions on a little bit sooner.
How many books are on this list monthly?
Right. That's a great question.
To read all of them. You have to read
All of them.
Yes. There are about 250 books on the list this month.
And
And
is
we're-
that anticipated to be the normal volume?
Yes, it is. And there may be more some months. As we approach the end of the school year, coming into the May or June board meeting, what we'll have the librarians do is make their plans for the following school year. And so they may have more titles that they would want to order the next school year. So I would expect heavier volume at that time.
Is there a particular tool or matrix that we're supposed to use to make this assessment, or is this just our own personal opinion?
That's a great question. We have selection criteria that we use as librarians to decide whether these books are appropriate. And so we can share that matrix with you of the things that we're looking for. We can also share more detail on each of the titles if you'd like. So what they're in the list, it's going to tell you what age ranges, what grade level they're being purchased for, but we can also include the professional reviews on each of those. And so you could read through that too if you would like. I realize that this sounds like a heavy lift. It is a heavy lift, and it's incredibly unusual. We wouldn't come to the board normally to ask for this sort of thing, but the legislation, Senate Bill 13, requires that this is a new approval.
Yeah, I have a similar question. Like, it should have like aligning on what we mean by review, so that we're set up to approve, which may just take some practice. It sounds like y'all got tools that we can utilize for this first round. And then my other question is making sure we've got enough time to set aside in our, for us to do this. So it sounds like you'll have that posted kind of a couple weeks in advance for us to dig into.
Do the trustees have access to the rubric that the librarians are using to review these books?
Not currently, but we will make that available right away.
Right, and then essentially what they're gonna have this week is an administrative recommendation of what should be, what we recommend is approved and what's not approved,
Correct.
right? And then the scoring criteria from the rubric is gonna be able to tell some of the story of why some things were approved and why they weren't.
That is true, yes. You're going to be getting the approved list, the things that the librarians and I vetted. So you'll see all of the, we don't provide necessarily rationale, but we have that rubric that we're using, so we're checking off the list. And so some of the things that we're looking for on that checklist are, is there any inappropriate material in it? No, there's not. Does it foster intellectual growth? Does it represent diverse populations? Is it factually accurate? So those are the things that we're looking for as we're reading those reviews. So as we read a review on a book, we're cross-referencing it with our checklist here. And so what we're providing you is that vetted, approved list, things we feel are appropriate.
And I think on top of that, you said we'd also get people's comments as well, if
That's
there's a parent
correct.
comment.
Yes, to date we have 4 public comments. 1 is referencing a specific book, and 3 are general comments about the process. Yes, so we provide that as well. Other questions or thoughts?
It just sounds like y'all been very thorough in how you thought about the internal process, and so thank you for that. And I'm sure it's been an added thing to you all's plate as well.
It has been. It's a lot of overhead for the librarians. We appreciate that.
Imagine it is.
I would say plan on doing it monthly, then donating consent most of the time, and if there's an issue, I'll read it.
Okay.
Because I don't think anyone wants to look at 750 to 1,000 books at one time. Even a list that long is daunting, so.
And, when Kim was able to share the rubric or the guidelines and procedures, I think it'll just provide a lot of clarity about how these books have been reviewed and eliminate any concern about is a book making it through the approval process that is not appropriate for kids.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Your hard work and the librarians' hard work.
Thank you. All right, Wes Vanacek is going to give us an overview of teacher incentive allotment.
Right. Alrighty. I know it's been a little while since we've talked about TIA. Excited to just kind of share the inner workings of it and our next steps, and certainly answer any other questions. So the teacher incentive allotment, this is a program that came out of legislation, I think in 17 or 18. We've been working on it since 24 to get it stood up. It's kind of a long ramp process, but essentially these are kind of the intentions or kind of the components of a system. There are 3 levels of designation. I know I've got 4 listed there because one is coming soon. But we're still operating under the recognized, exemplary, and master. And I'll explain what each of those mean as we go. Each one of those recognition levels carries a price tag or a reward to the teacher. And it ranges anywhere from $3,000 to $36,000, so real dollars. It does prioritize hard-to-staff positions, this whole program does. And really what that means from the state's perspective is there's a funding multiplier based on either the rural status of a school, which we do not have any rural schools, nor will we ever. And it also has a multiplier if based on the socioeconomic status of that school, and that's based off of Census Bureau data, not based off of free and reduced lunch applications. It's teacher-focused funding, so 90% of those funds must go to the campus that the teacher teaches at. We're directing all of those funds directly to the teacher that gets rewarded or gets designated. And then the really cool piece about it, aside from the money part, is that it's a 5-year validity. So it's a 5-year badge, essentially. So when a teacher earns that designation, they keep that badge for 5 years, regardless of their role. It doesn't always generate money for them if they step out of a teaching role. But as long as they stay in a teaching role, it's generating that funding, and that money is coming to them for 5 years. So how TIA works is the state requires that there's at least 2 components that you're using to create your designation criteria. So this is the minimum. This is kind of the right spot to start. School districts could add more components to it. I would say that that's recommended after you're approved and you really know what you're doing, if that makes sense. So we have teacher performance, and that's T-test, so that is our appraisal data. We're using domains 2 and 3, which are the domains that are evaluated during classroom instruction. There's 8 dimensions within those domains. Each dimension is scored on a scale and then averaged out a 0 through 5-point scale. That is then factored in with the student growth measure. And a student growth measure is literally a measure of percentage of students that are meeting or exceeding a growth expectation. So it's kind of, the denominator of a teacher's data is their total kids, and the numerator is the number of kids that are growing. All that combines to our local designation system. So building a TIA plan, how did we do this? What did we do? We had a stakeholder committee that included teachers from every campus, both in core academics as well as at electives. We had administrators from every level. We had district staff from multiple departments, and met over about 7 months back in 23-24. And we argued about weighting, eligibility, designation framework, the payout splits, all of the details, all the components that make our plan. A lot of really healthy discussion. That group also did outside research to figure out what is everybody else doing, how do we ensure that we're not creating a competitive disadvantage based on how we build this, because this is really a recruitment tool for teachers. The big factor here, kind of our limiting piece, is our valid and reliable student growth data. And so you can have all the best ideas, but if you don't have valid and reliable student growth data, that's where you have to start, is creating that before you even get to apply. So our designation framework, this is our eligibility bands right now. So what that means is these were the areas or the teaching kind of roles that we do have valid and reliable student growth measures in place. So pre-K, K through 8 reading and math teachers, Algebra 1 teachers, English 1 and English 2 teachers, and then that includes special education, dyslexia, and intervention teachers as well. And so what you see kind of is a common band reading and math through the majority of our system, including pre-K is a self-contained scenario. But those are the areas that we've got math and M-class and STAR, right? So of course we've got T-tests that came in at 50% weight and classroom student growth at 50%. Some districts will kind of change that, just kind of depending on the nature of their intentions, really. Our committee felt like until we know more, until we can make an informed decision to differ from 50-50, let's start 50-50 and then we can adjust from there. And you guys stop me if you've got questions as we go.
So if these are the eligibility, does that mean that if you're a high school biology teacher, you're not eligible?
That is correct.
Or a chemistry teacher?
That is correct. Yep.
And you said 90% goes to the teacher?
That's correct.
Where's the other 10% go?
We're going to get to that, but yep, there's an allowance for the district to hold to fund the program.
Okay.
And that's really, and the intention of that is these assessments, many of these assessments cost pretty big dollars. And so the allotment, they have an intention to allow the allotment to fund the program rather than taking dollars out of the classroom.
You know, in larger districts like Dallas or Boston or Houston, they have an entire department to manage this data validation. I'll give a preemptive kudos to Wes Vanchek because he is our department right now.
I got 2 more folks working really hard with
Yeah,
me too.
yeah. Suzanne Salceda and Deb Jacobson.
That's right.
Yeah, they've done the amount of data validation work they've done, particularly in the last couple of weeks, has been time intensive. But it's necessary in order to get through the red zone here in these last couple of months, and
We are on the
get
2-yard line.
We're that
We're real close. We're real close.
Les, 2 questions.
Yes, ma'am.
On the 5-year validity, can a teacher advance? in
They
their
can level up,
designation?
but they can't level down.
Okay.
Yep.
And then our T-test evaluators are principals?
That's principals and assistant principals, and of course we've got secondary appraisers at the district level.
Okay.
Right. So then we have board policy that should, and this is pre-TIA, but should a teacher appeal their appraisal, they can request a second appraisal, and that can come from someone who's not on the campus. So this is just talking about the T-test. Basically, you see the scores that the principal would mark, or the appraisal would mark as distinguished, accomplished, proficient, so forth. That follows a very clear rubric and training and calibration and so forth. We just codify it into numbers for our calculation's sake. So you see the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The requirement here is that you've got to have at least a 3 in all of those dimensions. And then, of course, we've got some minimums that actually create the cut points for being designated. This is just getting into a little bit more of the detail for the classroom growth scores. So pre-K, we use an assessment called the circle assessment. K through 3 reading and math teachers, we're using M-Class for reading and MAP for math. And then 4th and 5th grade, we're doing the same thing with M-Class and MAP, but we can also use STAR because there's a prior year STAR to compare growth to, right? So 4th grade can compare from 3rd grade and so forth. 6th through 8th grade, it's all MAP or STAR. And then high school English 1, English 2, and Algebra 1 is all STAR. And in the different disciplines, it's still using the same thing of either in-class MAP or STAR, depending if they're a mathematics intervention teacher or an ELAR intervention teacher.
Can I follow up on Rachel's
You bet.
question? On the assessment, the summative, the T-test summative, I could be inaccurate. The teachers are not appraised every year. Is that accurate?
So in TIA, they are.
Okay, so
That's
if
right.
you're
You're
in
eligible
consider or you're eligible, then you're going to be appraised every year.
That's correct.
Okay, all right.
Yep.
Okay.
Alrighty, so this is just a scale of how do we turn a percent of students growing into a number scale. So we've got a scale built here. We've got a 55% minimum growth score required. That translates over to 3.5, and so you kind of see how that translates across. And then we'll use an example. So here's a teacher with the following data. Their average T-test score was 3.72. And that's multiplied by 50% at that 50% weight. Their classroom growth score was 4.25, which if we look back over here, that was the 67%, so 4.25, again, multiplied by the 0.5. So those two numbers are added up to create their TIA score, and then their TIA score falls into our cut point range. So that teacher would be designated as an exemplary teacher in GISD. And these cut points are in line with the state's standards. The state standards are intended to recognize the top 30% of teachers in a system. Of course, our data may differ from that, and that's okay. It's not a fixed distribution. But aligning to the state standards gives us the greatest chance for approval of our system.
And Wes, where does the multiplier for teachers in hard-to-staff campuses come in?
Good question. Right here.
Okay.
And so this is the TIA payouts per campus, per designation level. This is good through April 2026. It gets updated each year. So kind of an area where you can see, so Benold, this exemplary was 6906, but if you scroll down a little bit and look at Forbes, it's 7967. And so the only difference between Forbes and Benold is the economic profile of the students in that zone based on census data. And so that's where you can kind of scroll through, look through the differences. And so what that does mean is that you'll have a teacher at one campus that's rated as exemplary, and the payout is worth different than a teacher at a different campus in the same district. Yep. And that's really what they're saying, prioritizes the hard to staff. The state would, the intention is that it's harder to get a teacher at the campus that has a higher payout. Yep. So these are the gross payouts, and so the teachers would get 90% of this minus Uncle Sam's cut, because this does contribute to their TRS withholdings. We can take a quick peek at what that looks like. So that was a Benold teacher, exemplary, 6906. Their 90% comes down to 6215 on the far right. All the different withholdings, some of those obviously vary based on their W-4 information. Some of it is fixed with TRS and so forth. And so what this teacher would be expected, or would expect, is $5,444.70 to hit their bank account in June as one lump sum payment following designation. So, along with some emails and notifications from us, but they would get, I'm sure that's what they care about. So there are some changes coming to TIA, not for this year, but rolling forward. So we will, basically we'll be undergoing some changes to what we just all looked at to modernize it for the new TIA. There's a new level called acknowledged. Essentially what was recognized is now acknowledged. So they kind of lowered the floor, but also increased the ceiling at the same time. So the intention there is to recognize a larger percentage of teachers. They put a little bit more money, so from going from 32,000 at the top up to 36, and then just a larger kind of bracket of teachers. So we'll have 4 designation levels after this year that we'll have cut scores for and so forth. So our future plans, here's where we currently are, where we started back in 23-24. We had an application process, and then we've had data capture, which has been 24-25. We are submitting data maybe as early as this week. It's due on the 16th. So we're probably going to be ready before the end of this week. So that's the 2-yard line remark. So we still technically have the most important obstacle to overcome, and that is passing 12 data checks.
How many teachers have you done this data dig on?
We have about 700 in the total set, but not everybody's eligible necessarily within that group. So yeah, we've got a good chunk of folks that we'll be submitting for designation. I don't really want to say those numbers until we're validated, but we have a large.
That's a lot.
Yeah, our eligibility kind of bands with the fact that we've got MAP and M-class reading and math, kind of K through 8, allowed us to have a pretty wide net. We've got a little over 1,000 teachers, I believe, and got almost 700, I think, or right around 600 that are actually eligible. And with plans to expand the eligibility. We just need to get approved so we can start expanding.
And Wes, all that money comes from the state.
That's correct.
All that funding
We're a
goes to-
pass-through, that's right. Yep. So future plans, we have these teams that kind of look and argue about all of these different decision points. We have information sessions each August just to try to make sure that new staff that haven't been with us are aware of the opportunities. We've got our validation coming very soon. Reviewing T-tests and student growth data is an ongoing practice, and of course, T-test appraisal. So it's super important that our appraisers are calibrated, and what one appraiser sees in one classroom and to another is calibrated and scored accordingly. Of course, we'll be notified early spring of all of our teachers that are designated. We'll verify all of those. We'll then verify their allotments, and then we'll notify folks of their allotments. And then in April, we'll be submitting, pending our approval, we'll be submitting an application to expand our TIA. That's the nutshell of teacher incentive allotment. Yes, ma'am.
That's a lot of work. The one question I have is, I'm sure that there's some way in your system, probably you started way back in 24, is when you're looking at student growth and you're looking at our priority schools. And maybe the priority schools, those kiddos are getting the same level of growth that other schools are that maybe are not a priority school. Or is there a way within is there a way within the system to make sure that everything is equalized?
I'm not sure if I understand your question necessarily. Everything is equalized.
So like if you go back to your one because I was looking at the numbers, and I think that's where it probably is, but I'm asking the question.
Okay.
Because let's look at Pearl, and look at the number of recognized, you look at the number of exemplary, and you look at the masters, which is 19. So is there a way that if you are a teacher at a school that's a priority school and may have more challenges, that it's equalized within the system and they're not penalized?
Oh, okay.
That's
Okay.
what I'm trying to figure. That's
Yes,
the piece
good question.
that I'm trying to figure out, because I have a sense that you do that here, but I'm not sure how.
So these numbers on the screen recognize dollar amounts for the payouts to
Yes.
teachers. So what I would say, the way that a school that may be higher priority is kind of equaled out is that we're measuring growth as
Yes.
opposed to achievement. And so in technicality, a student does not have to be on grade level to be identified as a grower.
Yes.
And so I would say that's where, if I'm understanding your question correctly, I would say that's one aspect where if a campus has lower performing achievement, they can still have growth data and have teachers that are being designated.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I figured and I guess my question was there kind of a study that looked at, because what I would hope is that those growth data for our priority school, that it is strong, that growth data is still it's going to be there for those teachers that are going to be used in this system.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep, so I think what we haven't done quite yet is, because I think it's a good project for after October 16th, and that is to analyze all of our designation data to see how it kind of lays out by campus. I think the intention of this, what you see in the data is, and the thing I would say is the theory here is that high T-tests equates to high student growth. That's a correlation that we're required to demonstrate, and if we don't demonstrate that, we don't have valid data.
Right.
And so the state is kind of recognizing that the same way by rewarding, Pearl, that's worth $19,000, right, kind of thing. And so the theory is that a higher performing teacher is incentivized, sorry to the non-Pearl kind of campus, but is incentivized to take their talents, if you will, to that campus.
Right.
Yeah.
Because there's more money in the
That's
master's
correct.
level than there is in the other.
That's exactly right.
And were those determined by the district?
No, ma'am.
By the state? Okay.
Thank goodness they were not.
I had to ask the question.
Yeah. No, the state determines this. They publish this list annually and updated annually.
Okay.
Fortunately, we're not determining that part.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, good question though.
Okay.
Other questions?
Great job.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Got a
Wow,
great
that's a lot
great
of
team.
work.
Small but mighty.
Yeah, it's gonna make us competitive with districts around us who already have, I mean, this is massive for teachers to have
For sure.
access to it, so.
Yeah, it is.
And have something to knock down in their practice that results in them getting this sort of payout is awesome. So,
Yep.
thanks.
Yep.
Yeah.
Great job, Wes. 2-yard line, sir.
We are there.
Is it
Got
time?
a
Can I
good
make
play
an
call.
acting joke about the 2-yard line?
No.
No, okay. I do too.
All right, we're going to transition to Heather Petrozzini, who's going to get with Jennifer Guidry, who's going to present our BOY data review.
Yes, so thank you, Wes, for setting us up. We're going to shift from this idea of growth right now to beginning of the year achievement. So we'll go ahead and get started. As Wes just shared with you, for reading, we do K-5, we are using M-Class, and for grades 6 through 8, we use MAP. And so all the data we're going to present to you tonight is based on a testing window from September 12th to September 2nd to September 12th. And there's really very little direct teach that has happened prior to that. You're spending most of that time on routines and procedures so that we can capture the data in the beginning of the year data. So please keep in mind that as we walk through this, there hasn't been much direct instruction yet when this test was taken. So we're going to start off with elementary reading, which is taken on M-Class. And you'll see on this chart, we have on the left side the 25-26 beginning of the year data by grade level, and on the right-hand side of the chart, you have last year's data. And what we really need to notice here is that this year we are starting with a higher percentage of students starting the year on grade level. It is not a huge difference, but it is incrementally larger. And so it's worth noting that there, specifically, I want to point out grades K through 2nd. We are seeing a little bit of a shift in the positive direction here, so it's very exciting to know we're already starting a little bit ahead of where we were last year. Middle school reading, and this is MAP. And I want to thank Trustee Blank for a phone call yesterday and a message so that I can explain this chart. The numbers in yellow are the national percentile. So if you look at 25-26, grade 6, we're scoring in the 60th percentile. that means 40% are doing a little bit better than us, and then 59 we're above 59%, I think is the nice way to say that. And you'll see, again, we're kind of where we were last year. We're actually exactly where we were last year, which is pretty funny. I ran the data twice because I didn't believe it. And then I went back and checked again today because I was scared that it was wrong. And it's exactly where we were last year. So this does indicate some instructional practices that need to adjust if we want to exceed where we ended last year. But this is just the starting point. The next test we'll look at is K through 8 math growth. So everyone takes this for math. And again, you'll see the same thing is sort of happening. On the left-hand side, we have this year, and on the right-hand side, we have last year. And the most exciting thing that happens again here is when you look at the percentiles, in 4 of the 6 grade levels that are up there, we're above the 60th percentile, which is very exciting. And then in the 24, 25, you can see that we're just kind of moving along. So starting the year from a stronger position is always a good thing. This test is broken down into different categories, as are the reading tests, so that we can drill down. But for this presentation, I didn't think you wanted to hear about phonemic awareness and data analysis at the 2nd grade level.
Can I ask a quick question? When
Absolutely.
y'all look at this, do you compare like grade 1 to grade 1, or do you do like grade 1 to grade 2, like cohort?
So I look by cohort because that is what's so interesting to me is when I look at the kindergartners last year, beginning of the year, we're at the 56th percentile, and then based on 1 year of teaching from GISD teachers, we're already at the 63rd percentile. So that's how I look at it. But also when we think about curricular resources, it's nice to look by bands. I think you look by bands for different reasons. But when I look at how students are growing, it's very exciting. The other thing to know too is for MAP specifically, they do every couple of years, they do a linking study where they compare this and they reset norms. And so this year is a year where norms were reset. So that's just the beginning of this year. So everyone that's taking MAP nationally is also looking at reset norms. And then when we look through 6 through 8 math achievement, again, you'll see last year is on the bottom, 25, 26, beginning of the year is on the top. And we are starting in a different place. You can see that this year's 6th graders, now when you compare them in 7th grade, they're at the 50th percentile. But we also know math gets more challenging as you move up. One thing to think about with the middle school math, because this comes up over and over again, is you don't take a different test until you are in Algebra 1. So the 6th graders are all taking the grade 6, even if they're in an advanced math track. The 7th graders, even if they're taking if they're taking 8th grade math, they are taking they're compared to other 7th graders. When you move into Algebra 1, which we also give, that is the first time you see something that might be outside of the band of your grade level. And that's because of all the different math pathways. It can get a little tricky to understand that. So we give these tests in the beginning of the year, and that's all well and good, but it's not anything until we do something with it to set our path for the year. So what does instruction look like now that we have a starting place? So we have a district level response, and then we worked with teachers or principals on September 18th. We provided a toolkit to principals, and then Daniel Brown from KT Accountability came in to tell them, so this is what this means right now, is students have average growth. And average growth is that 50% that Wes just showed you on MAP. We didn't plan that out, but you set me up very well. So average growth is considered just keeping on that 50% growth is considered 1 year of growth. if we want to change outcomes, we need to accelerate the amount of growth, and then that also pays off actually in dividends from the state. So we're going to kind of go quickly over this, and then Principal Guidry is going to share with you the great things that they did at Tippett with this data. So as you know, we have these 3 instructional priorities this year, and really this should start to feed into high quality tasks that align to standards, and we're using this data to plan for instruction as we move forward. So when Daniel Brown came, he shared this bottom where it says 24-25 boy. That data, and then looking up for the spring 2025 star. This is how this data translated into student outcomes with the year of growth that students experienced last year. Keeping in mind that some students experience a year of accelerated growth, and sometimes students experience average growth, and sometimes it's below average growth. But if we were to keep everything exactly the same, this is how that growth looked, and then he gave them the 25-26 beginning of the year data, and that's for principals to decide. What will this growth look like at your campus this year? And then what changes would you make if you were just to repeat the year all over again? And then he also shares this beautiful rainbow chart that always takes everyone a minute to kind of understand, but really we're looking at if the left-hand side is how students performed last year, you start to look at the numbers to say, this is how many points of growth. I want students to always be getting better. So if you were in the does not meet category, is it possible for you to move into high does not meet, or even into approaches? And that's how you start to earn some of those points. This is just star-based, not MAP and MClass, but this is some of the work that he shared. And we're able to use MAP data to help forecast. That MAP has a component called Star Projected Proficiency, and they're able to say if the student started the year in this yellow band and had an average year of growth, where would they end? Would they end in the orange band, or would they stay in the yellow band? And is that the equivalent of approaches? And so you sort of have to start to play with this and look student by student. And so I will pass this off to Principal Guidry so she can tell you about the great things that they did at Tippett.
Yeah, so as Heather mentioned, we got some great information from the district just with projections based on our beginning of year data, where we thought we were going to be. So this is my final accountability rating on the top from 2025, where we ended in star at 78 with a C rating at Tippett. And then based on our beginning of year projections, we saw an increase in domain 1, 2A, 2B, and stayed the same in domain 3, but would set us as a projected at an 84 as a B next year. We were very excited about this, obviously. One thing to note though is that the beginning of year data doesn't have a writing component to it as the STAR does. So that's one thing we factored in. We were very excited about this, but didn't want to get overly excited. We wanted to manage expectations and not like derail our hard work and thinking that, oh, we're going to get there as long as we just keep steady. So we took our teachers through an exercise where we said, okay, and this is, sorry, I did this in the summer, so original projection, I thought I was going to be a 76 instead of a 78, but we wanted to get to an 81 this school year. So we looked at it as what does that mean for the work we want students to do each day. And so we said that we want students collaborating and using discourse and academic language. We want them engaging in tasks that are aligned to the standard and the rigor of the standards. We want them writing across all contents. We want them doing hands-on, real-world application learning, and we want them evaluating and justifying their own learning. So then we said, okay, if that's the expectation that we have for students, what does that mean our teachers are going to have to do? So we talked to our teachers about, okay, then you're going to have to be creating systems and structures for expectations if we're going to be doing all those things, because you guys know how classrooms can get. That we're going to have to provide academic stems and norms for kids when they're in those, that we're going to have planned opportunities for discourse throughout our units, that we're gonna have to really unpack and understand our standards and content, and then plan multiple aligned tasks to those standards. And then we really wanted to incorporate the use of the instructional strategies playbook list from Lead Forward, and then the 7 steps training for sheltered instruction to really reach our EB populations. And then we were talking about if we're writing across contents, that we really have to have planned prompts and opportunities for genuine writing to come up in the different contents. And then plan opportunities in our units for students to engage in that content in creative ways. And then we're going to be looking at data and providing feedback in a timely manner. So then after we were told our teachers, like, that's a heavy lift, like to ask teachers to do all that, we asked them, what do they need from us to be able to accomplish those goals? And so at that point, after we did our protocol, we gave them a feedback form that they could fill out to ask for different kinds of supports from us as a leadership team to make sure if this is our expectations that we give them everything that they needed from us. So then, okay, I'm gonna back that up because that's So then you guys saw the map data. We took it and we met with teachers by content in vertical groups 6 through 8 by language arts and math. And we looked at, okay, we wanted them to go class by class and look for outliers. So if you have advanced classes, do you have any kids in the red, orange in those sections? And so you're just gonna place those kids in a group in your mind. If you have an inclusion modified section, C section, do you have any kids that are in the green and the blue? We're looking for like major outliers anyway that we might need to look at different supports for. So we talked about, is their placement where they're at the correct placement, or do we need to add additional supports for them to get them to where they need to be? So at that point, we had conversations about individual students, and we triangulated that data with historical STAR data, how we've been seeing them do in the classroom. And then we wanted to take them, and we had a whole like car theme analogy.
I was gonna put that slide in.
I know, but I was like, okay, so we said, you're gonna look and you're gonna group kids in each of your classes in 3 different groups. You're gonna think about them in 3 ways. Who's already set to make the growth they need in their where they're at, and you're just gonna be on cruise control with them, right? The way we're delivering instruction for them, the pace we're going at, it's working, we're meeting their needs. Who's about to enter the freeway and they just need a little bit of acceleration to get up to the speed of traffic? So you're gonna think about those kids in a different way. And then who's passing an 18-wheeler on a 2-lane road and you need to throw the throttle down, we need to give them everything we got. So we grouped our students in that manner, and then we broke off in the afternoon in our PLCs and we talked about how we're gonna build in the supports for those kids so that wherever they need to be, that we're giving the right amount of support for them to meet those growth projections. That is,
It's amazing. Okay.
So what do your teachers say? What kind of supports do they need?
so what they asked from us, they love the support my ICs give them, and so they asked specifically like the instructional strategies playlist, they want us to preview different resource materials we have and hand select just a fewer amount of them for when they come together to meet with us so that they're not overwhelmed with the amount of choices they have. So that was one of the requests. Another one was to keep coming together. A lot of them love coming into PLCs to meet. They like the sharing of ideas. Oftentimes when we can work it in, we give a half day so that they can get together and plan. And just recently, our amazing leaders created that for our math team, so we even have a group going tomorrow. So that they're getting together for a half day with other like teachers around the district, and they're planning out their upcoming units. So they're able to share ideas and do things like that.
Excellent.
All right.
Very good. Good job, Jen.
Yeah.
I just want to thank our principals for the work they're leading. This, I mean, the way Ms. Guidry, I think you know an effective leader when she takes complex work and it lays it out in a way that's so easy to understand and seems simple, but this level of work takes a lot of just wrestling with the hard, listening to the people serving kids, and then figuring out what's the clarity and support we can provide to make it happen. So thank you. Great job, Heather. Thank you.
let's talk zoning.
Let's do it.
All right, so we're back for edition number 2 of the zoning conversation. As we promised, we'll be back each month with some updates. Last month we spoke mostly about, or Landon spoke mostly about the process. And this, we want to dive in a little bit more about the process and explain, kind of give a little bit more of a guidebook of what our parents, families, and our campuses will experience. So to start off, we've got the charges. Nothing on the next 3 slides have changed. These are the charges, parameters, and commitments that we're operating by, but obviously we're here to create new attendance zones because we're opening 2 new schools. We want to address capacity concerns at Wolf, Williams, and Cooper, but also optimize campuses that may have lower enrollment and kind of shoot for a balanced approach. And then, of course, plan for future student growth. Our parameters, we're going to utilize community feedback and input. We're going to involve departments and campuses in this process. We'll recommend attendance zones that help balance student demographics, and then prioritize student programs, transportation, and safety to the best of our ability in those plans as well. We hope to minimize the use of portables, and then we'll be transparent with future zonings, facilities, and school needs. Finally, our commitment is to draft attendance zones that support ongoing financial health and academic achievement for the next 10 years. And so these are long-term decisions, we know that. It creates some pain moments in the short term. We've got to think long-term also. We want to minimize future attendance zone changes for the same students, so we're not kind of flip-flopping or kind of that whiplash effect for particular neighborhoods or families. This will allow us to best serve the students and our families, and allow us to be the best stewards of our district resources that we can be. So for today, what we want to show you is kind of a guide for what to expect. So looking at some messages to our stakeholders, of course the timeline in detail so folks know what to expect as well. We want to tell you how we're going to try to get out in front of addressing the top concerns, what the process will feel like to different end users, and then the data that we use to make decisions, and then finally how our parents and families can be involved in the process. So the messaging to our parents and families, these are just some kind of sentiments that we will capture in those messages, but we know that this is a complex and emotional topic. We don't want to oversimplify this as just redrawing lines on a map. This does change, and it directly impacts students, families, as well as our staff. Obviously, you'll likely feel a mix of emotions, concern, and curiosity, as well as a desire to understand the why. So we want to try to be able to be on the front side of that information, so folks at least know why we're making the decisions that we're making and what input that we're using. And then we want to collaborate early and often to provide a clear roadmap for the process, so we can hear and consider input along the way. Messaging to our staff is very similar. It can be equally disruptive for our staff as well, whether those are staff that may have to consider assignment changes or campus changes, or those are staff that are also parents that are impacted in the zoning work. So we'll engage staff in the discussions either directly or through leadership as representatives. Of course, we understand staff will be concerned about their work assignments potentially, and so we want to make sure that we're very transparent with that information in early. And then we provide clear information, answer questions, and support through the process. It's a little bit of that. We can't promise everything will be okay, but we'll walk with you through the process and include folks in that process. So just taking a look at the small print, this is kind of our when certain things are going to happen. So I would call your attention to the different lines that kind of are colored. Those are the kind of inflection moments. We'll have a community survey that opens it, that'll go out tomorrow. It'll close on the 21st, and we're really just trying to gather some more information from our community. We found ourselves, after the last go-around, kind of wishing we'd asked some more questions at large. And so we've drafted a survey that I think will gather some more sentiments that we can use in the decision-making process. Our parent-family committee window will open on the 9th, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that looks like in just a few moments, but we'll have that committee. And then we've got different feedback moments throughout the next couple of months. So starting on November 10th is our first online community feedback. That's when that will open. And then our first town hall is on the 12th.
And what time do those town halls finish?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me make sure I don't have it on another slide, but I think they're 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock to 6 to 7 o'clock, I believe, is the time. But we'll confirm that.
Plus the community survey, it'll go out on all the parents' group.
That's right. Yeah, we'll send it out all the ways that we send things to our parents. Yeah, that's right. And so what you'll see is kind of a pattern emerging. Once we kind of do a big major information gathering, then we'll start iterating, and we will create plans. We'll post those online for public comment. We'll have town hall for more public comment and discussion, and then we'll go back to the drawing board with that plan and make any additions or make some tweaks. And so we'll kind of follow that pattern for a good while, and really try to get to the different areas of the district that are most affected by these potential zoning changes, to give those communities an opportunity to come and have their voice heard and hear what's going into the decision making. It's a lot of information, and if we just kind of leave it to look at a map on the computer, there's a lot of context that's often missing.
When is the first draft going to be posted? Is it that November 10th? Or, and we may not have that date just yet.
No, that should be when first, there or very close to that time. Yep. All right, well, Clint, tell us about how we're going to jump ahead of these concerns.
Okay, next couple of slides are addressing some of the top concerns that we know that our families are going to feel. First and foremost, we know that this is a difficult and emotional topic, right? You know that going into it, and so always our goal is to create stable zones, but change is sometimes necessary. Certainly, attendance zoning is one of those necessary changes for a fast growth district. To the extent possible, we try not to split neighborhoods, but in some cases that's inevitable as part of the zoning process. And then, as we get to the end of this process and have a solution to provide resources and opportunities for families to connect with their new school communities. One of the things that you'll always see when we put out the survey, one of the things that we're very likely to get back is an interest in maintaining that proximity to school. But the nature of the population density, it's not statistically possible for 100% of the families to always go to the school closest to their house. So we, obviously, the school district provides transportation to students living more than 2 miles, and in some cases within 2 miles, if it's considered a hazardous routing situation. We'll include our expertise from our transportation department in terms of looking at routing and impacts as we go through the scenarios. And obviously, safety and efficiency are always key considerations as we go through the scenarios. And then a complicating factor is we acknowledge that many of our families that are eligible for transportation opt to drive their students to school just because it makes sense for them as a family. Academic and extracurricular experiences. In another district that I used to work in, the term was guaranteed and viable, right? All schools in our district are committed to providing exceptional educational and extracurricular opportunities. And rezoning is about balancing our resources and the opportunities. And Wes spoke earlier. In some instances, it's addressing campuses that are over capacity, but at the same time, addressing some of those campuses that are maybe underutilized and getting closer to that optimum level. And then too frequent change and sibling impact, right? Our goal is comprehensive, is a comprehensive solution that'll limit or reduce the number of times and the number of moves that families have to experience over time. And then we understand the importance of keeping siblings together, and so as part of this process, one of the things that we'll be looking at is grandfathering options for, just to throw out an example of if you're an incoming 5th grader or an incoming 8th grader, as we're looking at zoning for elementary and middle school.
And how I understand that correct is the sibling has to be in the school together, right? Like if that sibling has already graduated just because so-and-so went to a particular school, doesn't mean the sibling can maybe go. There has to be a sibling still in the school.
So kind of the rising 5th grader with the first
Yes.
grade. As the 5th grade leaves, then the first grade would then go to the new zone.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's kind of a 1-year grandfather clause.
So, what does this process, feel like and look like? And the next couple of slides will share a little more about the opportunities for community feedback. But there'll be, online opportunities. We'll have a dedicated website to view the draft scenarios, data, and submit comments. And then, as you saw in the timeline, there'll be a series of regional town hall meetings throughout the district. And then ultimately, this is a really important point, right? The final plans will be reflections of the input we received. I know that's been the case here on past zoning efforts. It's also been the case in other districts where I've worked on rezoning efforts. Is the ultimate solution that we come up with will absolutely include aspects of the input that we get along the way.
Which is great. If I remember correctly, I think the last time we did this a few years back, it was like model 7 or 8 that we settled on.
It was 9.
It was 9.
Yeah, so the fact that we don't do these meetings to go through the motions or look through the feedback, there's a separate committee that comes together. We look through all the feedback we received, and we listen to that feedback to make the next best version.
And I can say, as a parent, the families in the district really appreciate this. Not only the transparency, but also the inclusion.
Mm-hmm.
And just like Devin said, you listen and it shows. And people appreciate that. And it builds trust in ways that will pay dividends that we can't necessarily predict right now. We have other issues that come up. There's kind of more of a underlying sense of trust because the way you guys handle issues like this.
And then the data and information, this is going to be familiar information. This, the type of information that the board is used to seeing when we get the demographic updates throughout the year. Residency data, school capacity, growth projections, feeder patterns, and then obviously geographic boundaries, and then just some snapshots of, these are the types of things that you're used to seeing. The heat map showing where all the students, all the families live, active and planned subdivisions, current enrollment in comparison to capacity, and then looking out those 5 and 10 year projections as we see which campuses are going to face challenges in the future. And then with that, I think Wes is going to talk a little bit about.
So, to your point, Mr. Blankenship, how can our families be involved in the process? At a minimum, the community-wide survey. So there'll be, watch out for a link on that, and we'll be flashing that kind of everywhere and sending it out all of our different media channels. This is our primary tool to get a lot of information, so we're hoping for strong participation. Of course, they can attend community town hall meetings, whether that is in their neighborhood or their regional area or somewhere else, right? There's kind of no rules, and come and go. And then, of course, they can comment on the proposed zone changes online. So there will be a comment button where they can leave their comments, and I know we'll get plenty of those. And then finally, they can apply to be on the committee, the community committee. We'll talk about that next. So this is kind of, this one, my bad, y'all. The committee's job is to represent the community. They're not developing the actual zoning proposals, and that's something that we'll be clear with them on. But their role is to review the survey input, honestly kind of help interpret that survey input. They're the families and the community members to understand what is meant by this, previewing scenarios developed by the district, and then discuss how factors like transportation, demographics, and programs might impact those boundaries. The last iteration of zoning, we learned a lot of really useful information from both the committee input, but also those town hall meetings to really help us understand the true impact versus kind of the on-paper impact of a potential decision. They'll review community feedback, discuss the topics with us, and then help inform what is the best way to communicate this. Because sometimes there's going to be a moment where a decision is the right decision is not the most popular one, or it's just not popular with a particular group. And so helping us navigate that messaging so we can be super clear and transparent. And there's going to be a part where I disagree with this, but I understand where you're coming from. Is I think an ideal place to get So the application will be launched on October 9th. It'll close on the 23rd. This is for the committee. Representation from all campuses matters to us, and we'll randomly select a parent representative who applies from each school. So the application will go out to all parents, and then we'll literally run it through a random selection for every single campus that have representation. And then, of course, if we don't have anybody from a particular school, we'll work with the campus principal to get representation. And this just for information for those members, but these are the 3 meetings that they'll need to be able to attend on the 6th of November, 4th of December, and then January 22nd.
And Wes, I just want to say thanks for making that. I know last time I asked,
You
how
bet.
were those going to be selected? Because it initially was the principal, which just kind of thing. So I appreciate you all doing a look around.
Yeah,
Make
you
sure
bet.
everyone gets a chance and then taking the next steps.
You bet.
Yeah.
Thank y'all for the question and suggestion. It improved our process, and we can get kind of more varied representation. Alrighty, so last few points, and just for folks that are interested at this point about it, they can jump online to this link and see our current attendance zones. That's an interactive map, so that is a look at like a final product, but it's the current one. And then of course on that link is also, or on that side is also a link to the work of how we arrived at our current zone, so they can kind of take a look at all the different pieces of information there. So with that, we're happy to answer any more questions.
I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
On the data and information we use in rezoning, I don't see anything in there about how good of an athlete they are.
You're right, Mr. Hurt, that does not factor into our zoning decisions. That's right. That's right. Yeah, 40 times height, verticals.
None of that?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just wanted to be clear.
Thanks, Mr.
We'll leave that to high school NIL.
Stars.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes, ma'am.
When you say student residency data, that where students live, I don't see on there where you're looking at economically disadvantaged or any sort of categories like that when you're making that. I don't see that listed here.
Yep, great question. So that is baked into that residency data. So this top left map right here, it shows where students are. So that is just density, right? Density and location. But all of those homes, those are all geo-coded, and that demographic data is captured on there. So when we run zoning iterations, or scenarios, thank you, the demographic data is populated as part of it. So we'll be able to see what the makeup is of every scenario.
Ms. Malton, just to foreshadow this with you, that will be part of the ongoing process as we do attendance zoning. And part of the rest of it we'll have to have is when we look at when we get to version 4 or 5, we'll look, let's take middle school. We'll have 5 middle school zones, and we'll have to have some conversations of, okay, if there's imbalance in students that qualify for free and reduced lunch across the 5 middle schools, how do we have the conversation of, is it better that a neighborhood is rezoned more than once over the course of 3 years to provide balance, or is it more important that there's that the neighborhood stays and there's a slight imbalance? And so that'll be an ongoing conversation that we have as we're going through this.
And I agree with that. I mean, I think but I think that we have to be transparent from the very beginning about what the data is saying and that's out there.
Yeah, we'll provide it on the front end.
That'd be great. Okay.
Thank you.
Right, trustees, any other questions? Mr. Chair, I'm going to hand it back to you. We'll have to open up to go through this section.
All right, with the conclusion of that portion of the workshop, we're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. The time is 6:55. And I call the meeting of Georgetown Independent School District to order. Let the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meeting Act, Texas Government Code 551. The board is going into session, so we can immediately go into closed session under the authority of Texas Government Code 551, subchapter D. The board will go into closed session at 6:56 p.m. to discuss personnel pursuant to section 551.074 and consultation with our attorney pursuant to section 551.071. When we come back, we may be short 2 board members, but that is just because they have some other obligations. And so we will still maintain quorum the whole time if they have to leave during closed session. With that, 14 p.m. The board originally went into closed session at 7:03 p.m. And with nothing other agenda items, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Motion.
I will motion to adjourn.
Trustee McFarland,
Second.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
I know.